Hello, and welcome to Metachemistry. This is episode 103, and we want to take some time to talk about N4. In the midst of all of the N5 news and excitement that's going to be coming out very soon after this releases, it's going to be something of a retrospective on N4 and kind of what we miss, what we still hope to change since we haven't seen all of N5 yet, and just kind of talk about the addition, since this was kind of what prompted us to get started with metachemistry in the first place. But before we get started, we want to give a shout out to Mo Games. Mythic's Online Emporium is an online supplier of Infinity that you can find at mo-games.com. And as part of their sponsorship, all of our patrons get a 10% discount code at that store. And whether you're a patron or not, if you join our Discord, which is free, you're entered into a raffle for a coupon code each month for $40. So in order to enter, you just need to be a part of our Discord, and we will raffle that off, and that's good for anyone in North America. Because what's better than games? Mo Games. And tonight we have Azoka, Ian, and myself. So how have things been looking for you guys in your hobbying and gaming endeavors over the last week or so? Ian, you want to start?
Well, let's see. Not Infinity, because we've been waiting on N5 stuff to drop. And other than that, we've been playing a game called Judgment Eternal Champions. We actually just did a tournament, which is kind of funny because we had 8 people, and that was more than the company's big official tournament that they did at their home area. So it was a fun time. But yeah, that's where the gaming's been at for the past week or so.
Nice. Yeah, I've gotten a chance to try it, and I enjoyed it. I don't know if it's something that I will necessarily jump in on, but it's something I could see myself trying out every once in a while. But what about you, Azoka?
Well, I've been doing sort of similar things. I was at the tournament, and it's good times. I've been enjoying the game quite a bit. It's a shame that they didn't have a lot at their hometown. It seems it's like a relatively new game, so kind of picking up steam, but I'm a MOBA enjoyer, and it's sort of MOBA inspired, so I'm all about it. But outside of that, I've gotten a little bit of Infinity in still, just playing some games and enjoying the last little dregs of N4. And I'm even thinking this Wednesday I'm probably going to swing by and get a demo on N5, which is weird being an Infinity player getting a demo on the new version of the game. But figure I'll try it.
Yeah, it should be a good time. Yeah, in fact, I ran several demos this past week. Been working on getting some painting done for the Sandtrap box set. I know things have been kind of blocked in for a little bit, but now I'm trying to just focus on finishing a model at a time instead of trying to batch paint half the box.
Yeah. Have you been just batch painting and that sucked?
Kind of, yeah. And so I've gotten like 70% of the way through on like the Pano half, for instance, and probably like 20% of the way done on the JSA half.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, never mind, this is not fun. I feel like I'm not actually getting there yet. So I finished off the Griffin. And yeah, so then I have a better idea of the whole process.
Nice.
And we'll see how that goes.
You thinking you're gonna end up playing some JSA?
No,
we're gonna get a whole crew of JSA? No?
I mean, probably not. I mean, maybe I'll try it out, but I don't expect myself to like branch into JSA specifically.
Yeah, just since you have the base ones.
Yeah, I'm much more interested in Kestrel.
Does seem pretty cool. Their minis also look really good, so I'm with you there.
Yeah, and like I really like the Shinden Butai sculpts. Like they look really good, but I don't know if that's necessarily something that I'm going to enjoy playing. But for reasons that we'll talk about soon, I think Kestrel is going to be a good fit.
Right.
So yeah, I think the topic that's kind of on most minds lately is the factions, or rather sectorials, that are leaving Infinity, at least for the time being. Now, it's important to remember that some of these will show up in a different form, and we have some information / guesses as to what that might look like, and some that are likely to reappear and just show up when they get a remake down the line in this edition. Like, what we saw was just what N5 is going to launch with, not the entirety of N5 for, the entire edition or anything like that. But just to recap, in case anyone hasn't seen or has forgotten, the sectorials that are leaving are from Pano, we're losing Varuna, Neoterra, and Acontecimento. From Ariadna, we're losing Merovingia and Caledonia. And then from NA2, we're losing Forco, Starco, and Spiral. And technically JSA, but, that's getting its whole faction. So, not really lost, just promoted. So, of those, that's about 12% of the factions in the game, which is notable. Like, that's a reasonable chunk of things leaving. And I know there's a lot of feelings going on around that, particularly for people that play those factions. And so I kind of want to start with that a little bit, because I know that at least some of these are things that us here on the show have played. And yeah, just kind of want to gauge where you guys are at in terms of these changes, and how does that make you feel, and what are your just general thoughts on that? Ian, I know that you have played most, if not all, of these factions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, obviously, I'm sad to see them go, because there's a lot of those factions that are kind of like personal favorites of mine, especially Merovingia. I really jived with Foreign Company, and I've always liked Neoterra and Akon Shock Army. Those have been really fun, dabbling back and forth between those. Spiral, I tried it. It's interesting. Not as much there, and of course Caledonia is just a classic. I've dabbled in here and there as primarily an Ariadna player over the years, so sad to see him go, but also I recognize the need to kind of trim things back a bit and make the game a little more accessible, because something that I've encountered a lot with new players is the whole, like, this game is cool, I want to get into it, I like this faction, they sound awesome, what do you mean they're out of print?
Yeah, exactly.
So, these mostly being factions that are out of print. Spiral's the weird one, because their stuff is mostly more. I mean, I guess it is technically out of print now, but it was like they were like the new stuff, but it's all in Toha, and Toha sticking around. So take that as you will. But they were a lot of the older factions. They were ones that had been kind of on the back burner for a while. So I totally get it. Though I will make the argument that Caledonia and Merovingia, I'm kind of surprised that US is sticking around and not Merovingia getting folded in. And because they put several US models out of print over the last couple of years, Desperados, which are even in the vanilla Ariadna list in N5, which is shocking to me. But they've put a bunch of this stuff out of print, but through Cosmoflot and reinforcements, every current Merovingia unit, except for Metros and Suaves, has a current sculpt. So, kind of surprised that just didn't get rolled over. And I mean, in Caledonia, they're they had gotten a lot more resculpts earlier, but through again Cosmoflot, they ended up getting updated Scots Guard and stuff. So like they ended up basically being entirely current except for the Cameronians, I believe. So, both of those are pretty solid to come back, and we even get Galwegians somehow in Vanilla Ariadne and N5. So, there's little areas that they can reintroduce these. I'm excited for, but Neoterra, they got with reinforcements a lot of stuff. So there's not a whole lot outside of like Auxilia and maybe a few other things there that solidly needed a resculpt. But Shock Army, that's the one I'm actually really sad about, because they had a lot of stuff they've been out of print for so long, even with some of their more current up-to-date sculpts. But they had some older models like the Guardia de Assalto that I just absolutely love, that I'm sad that I don't think that's ever going to come back to the game, to be honest. It makes me sad because I really like that unit and I like that army. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But what about you, Azoka? Have you had much experience with these factions?
I haven't had the craziest amount of experience with them. I guess initially when I first started the game, I was really interested into MO and Caledonia. So I will never get to. I never really played Caledonia, but now I may not ever actually get to play Caledonia. It is something to be said that they are making these expired or not included factions and sectorials available through a PDF doc to play in like N4, but realistically, I don't see anybody really wanting to do that. I generally don't see a lot of people wanting to play older versions of games when there's a current version that is out and getting traction and play, right?
I agree.
Yeah,
so
the new version has to be like super bad for the community to kind of just play an earlier version.
Yeah, and I don't see that happening. I really don't see that N4 has a draw, which we're going to kind of talk about here. I don't see that N4 has a lot of positive things that you would want to go back to see, which is fine. But one thing that is interesting is you touched on it, where the Neoterra got a lot of reinforcement profiles and whatnot, and it was kind of like folded into their link teams and whatnot. I think that they're going to do something with reinforcements. Because like even in JSA, they added the new reinforcements, but they're not in any of the sectorials. Currently they're in Oban, but that's, I'm pretty sure that's going to go away. So they'll be in vanilla. And I wonder what fire teams like that are going to look like. So I'm expecting to see some level of these outdated or the factions that lost their sectorials from being playable to be the reinforcements of the game. So that way CB doesn't have to devote the development time and playtesting time of bringing up all of these factions fully to N5, and they can just do little bits and pieces of them in reinforcements.
Well, we do know that they said that reinforcements is sticking around. What that looks like, we don't know, but
right.
It's theoretically going to be more integrated into the core system. But as far as the JSA reinforcements, while they didn't really list it, well, actually, have we seen the vanilla JSA chart yet? I don't remember.
We have, yeah. Yeah, it's in the book, so it's readily available.
I think about the Ariadne one, where it has all the Merovingian reinforcements in a block at the end of the chart. So was the JSA one similar to that?
Yeah. Okay. Every vanilla had their respective reinforcements bundles in there.
Cool.
Gotcha.
No, No fire teams yet, except for Kestrel and Shinden.
I'm losing my favorite N4 hacker in Laxmi.
Yeah, she's so awesome.
I know.
Yeah.
And Hannibal was fun. I did run him in some lists and did well with him, but Laxmi was definitely like she was auto include in my 4Co lists.
She's a hoss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And priced
Laxmi's
very
pretty
well.
sweet. Yeah, for me, I only ended up playing Neoterra and Spiral Core out of the things that are leaving. And Spiral, I think, is largely leaving because Toha's been in a weird design space for all of N4. And I think part of it is just the narrative as well has been written to not really support Spiral in particular, and to a lesser extent, Toha as a whole. So I'm not really surprised as far as that goes. Neoterra was something that I've been wanting to revisit, and I have played a little bit, but recently I've only played another one game or so with them. But yeah, I mean, the reason that they've talked about removing factions is the game becoming bloated. That's 43 factions down to 38 after this change. Or actually, I think it's actually
35.
42. 42 down to 38.
Oh, we're only losing 4? No.
Because JSA is a faction and has 2 sectorals, and Kestrel was added. So yeah, I mean, those numbers might be just a hair off, but right about there. And there is a lot in the game, and that takes time to balance, takes time to develop for, and that's not always feasible because the game can't grow indefinitely. Like, if we think of like Magic the Gathering is a common example for something like this, where it has formats. And theoretically, they could do something like this in Infinity, but basically, the game has been around for about 30 years roughly, and there's tens of thousands of cards available, and they just can't all reasonably be played together. And so they have a format I guess 2 formats that are set up to be able to use all of those. But generally, the formats that I know there's Commander, but I'm not trying to get too deep into this analogy. But Standard and Modern are going to be pretty common formats for people to play, and those are rotating things where they will have things up to a certain point and then they will fall off. And now I don't want to see Infinity necessarily be a rotating format per se, but there is something to be said where for the health of the game, it can't infinitely progress. You can't just keep adding things and adding things and adding things without taking something away at some point to compensate for that.
Totally.
And so that's part of why this is happening now, because it's a new edition change, and this is a painful process. Like, anyone who plays any of these factions does not like that this happens. Like, even us, I don't think any of us are like specifically happy that these are going away. I think that
screw you, Neoterra.
Right. No more bolts. No more bolts. At least not at BS19.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that none of us like that these are leaving, but I think that it's a necessary pruning that has to happen for the game. And it's not necessarily that these are factions that are overpowered or that are making the game difficult inherently. It's just that there's so much that in order to have room to add new things, and we need to add new things for the game to continue to grow and to remain interesting, something has to give.
Yeah.
And so this is the point where something's giving. And like I said, there's no good time for this to happen. People are going to be upset no matter when this came up, but it was going to have to at some point, regardless. Like, it's just not possible otherwise. So,
yeah. Well,
I don't like it.
For perspective, currently, Pano has, taking out the ITS stuff, 90 distinct profiles or distinct units in vanilla Pano. 90.
So many.
Yeah.
Now, there's going to be some crossover here and there because you have some Merc troops, you have this and the other. But so let's cut that down and let's just say they have 75 distinct units in vanilla. Okay, there's 10 factions. So now that's 750 different units in the game, which it is probably a little bit lower than that, but that's still, let's say it's 600 distinct units in the game. And then each one of those units has multiple profiles. So now you're running into thousands of lines of data that need to be balanced across the edition relative to each other, in faction and out. That is a Herculean amount of effort to keep that running and balanced and going how it should be and needs to be for especially the competitive scene of the game, which to this point, let's be clear, Corvus Belli has generally done an absolutely bang up great job doing that. That's part of why we love this game so much, is that it is generally very well balanced. But just think about that, ballpark 600 different units. And then if each unit has let's just say average of 5 different profiles, because some of them have like 10 and some of them have like 2, that's 3,000 profiles. I mean,
so many.
Total ballpark figure, but there's so many. It is so much to go through and go over and try to make it work. And then, especially when now you have out of print stuff and all that, as much as it hurts, the trimming is going to be good for the health of the game. It's going to allow them to really focus on making the game that much better, because they can put all those resources and time into a more consolidated effort.
I agree. And one of the benefits that Infinity has is a lot of their balance and profiles are pretty universal. So even though there are like 5 profiles in one model, a lot of those end up being the same, so it's not that crazy. But I mean, like, when you actually want to look at balance and stuff, certain models within a faction have a better performance, even if it is the same exact model, right? Like if you take one exact same model and put it over into a different faction, it will not work the same way. Depending on link teams, of course. So,
or just other units and within that
synergies,
faction and synergies, and how there's a lot of factors. So it is a very complex effort to make it work.
And one thing that you kind of touched on is just how much there is really kind of adds to this homogenizing factor of the game, which I personally am very strongly against, because I like things feeling unique. And like, if you're going to play a faction, there should be some reason to play it outside of its looks. I mean, looks should draw you to the faction, and you should absolutely play a faction because you love how it looks. I think that is a great reason to play a faction. But for other players, mechanical differences and uniqueness is also a draw. So I want to see less. I think that seeing less profiles is going to help us reach that.
Yeah. And we can kind of see a microcosm of that in each of the vanilla factions. Like you had mentioned, Ian, like Pano had 80, 90 units, roughly speaking, counting mercenaries and the like, in vanilla as of the tail end of N4. And now we look at the N5 list, and I want to say it was about half that. Thereabout.
It was about 50-ish.
Yeah.
Is what I was noticing on the vanilla factions were getting. They were getting, let's say, 55-60% of what vanilla was prior. Now, that said, there is, especially with Pano, actually all the factions, there's new units that are being added in. So, it might actually only really be 45 or 50% of what was there before, but then with the new stuff added on. But it seemed to be averaging out around the 50-ish unit mark.
Yeah, Vanilla Yuching has 51.
Yeah. And so that is kind of another reason, just like I was trying to get at earlier, in terms of the game can't expand indefinitely. And that's true of these vanilla factions also. Like, one of the things that Bostria had mentioned was that vanilla factions can't continue to be a dumping ground for everything you can possibly take.
Yeah.
And we've seen that, where they've been changing that design philosophy in late N4, surely because of, working on N5 during at least some of that. Like, with Torchlight being designed from the ground up as an N5 army and then ran back into N4. Now you can see that there's a bunch of units that were unique to Torchlight and not present in vanilla. And Starmada was kind of the same, and we saw that with Bakunin and things like that. And that's because you can't just stuff everything forever, because there's going to be a breaking point. And part of that is also makes it so that a lot of those things are not very appealing, because there's so many options. One, it makes vanilla hard to approach for newer players. And two, there's a lot of stuff that just feels invalid practically, because there's so many options that there's always something better than the last thing. And so I think that this will give vanilla factions more specific identity, especially since we're seeing most mercenaries go away from vanilla factions, at least. So I'm really excited for that. I think that that'll be good for the game. I think factions will feel like those factions. And it kind of gives us a good, fresh starting point to move on from there.
Yeah.
So, with that said, I kind of want to talk about some things that are in N4 that might be nice to see change. Things that haven't come up as of recording this in N5 that, I hope to be done with. And so I have a handful here, and I know this was one of our listeners, Spicy Eric, asked if I would have a checklist available. And so, did I make it a checklist? No, but here's some things. But yeah, one of the big ones for me is impersonator becoming a single marker state and just having a modifier attached to it. So what is currently imp1 would just be impersonation -6, and standard impersonator either being a 0 or maybe even a -3, and kind of being an alternative to camo with the other usual benefits in terms of deployment and not triggering deployables and things like that. I think that that would be really nice, because it's the only thing in the game that works that way. And even on models that have it, only a couple models, it works with 2 states. And it feels really rough to know that a model can guarantee 20 inches of movement and you cannot do anything about it, even if you succeed all of your rolls, if they don't want to be seen. So I'd love to see that change.
Yeah, I am right behind you on that change. I think impersonators are awkward and unique. Granted, unique is a good thing, as I had just discussed, but the whole being able to move, and then move without any penalties is pretty wild.
Yeah, and along that, I would say that it'd be really cool if Biometric Visor just auto-discovered hollow echoes and impersonators.
Totally.
Because on half the impersonators in the game, the benefit of having a biometric visor doesn't even work.
Yeah, it's the biovisor is so. I mean, sure, it only costs like a point, maybe, but like, yeah, and it can come into play. And when it does come into play, you're like, yes, that's great, but it's just not enough. Like, I would never take you're very rarely going to run into a impersonation marker unless that's heavy in your meta, right? Like if you're seeing a lot of Fides and a lot of Speculakillers, which they are very good. You're just generally like, if I'm going to a tournament, I'm not going to shove a biovisor for the purpose of countering impersonation, largely because it hardly counters it.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't do the job that it's meant to do.
Yeah.
But it does classifieds.
It does.
You're not
classified?
wrong.
Hey,
One-
I took Hannibal specifically because there's the classify that you need a visor, whether that's MSV, BioVisor, or XVisor. And that mission happened to also play against a Shaw's player who tried to do the infiltration, and then I got to use the BioVisor for that. One time ever.
One time ever.
It was awesome, but it was one time ever.
Yep.
I feel like that you didn't take it because he had a visor. You took him because he was there and has some other useful traits.
No.
It's like there are other visors in faction.
No, but one of the mission lineups was highly classified or countermeasures, and building the list out. I took him partially because he had the BioVisor because he could do that classified, but also because he could do other classifieds, and it allowed him to stack up several things. It just happened to come into play one time to use the BioVisor for what a BioVisor is supposed to be used for.
Sure.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool. You know, one of the things that I'd like to see go away, and I really never noticed this until Polynikes had actually brought it up, but moving a link team and then dodging for extra inches is really kind of annoying. Or like, it would be cool if you just made one dodge roll for the whole link team, and then you moved everybody, because it can really bog down the game when you're like, all right, I got to roll 5 dodges, or the dodge plus move for the second half of your move. So like Norkius, for example, he dodges on a 15 and, you know, he gets plus 2 inches. So he can be a 6'4" profile, basically. So it's like, why not just make him a 6'4" profile and just keep the dodge plus 2 inches there? That would save on, because like if I'm doing, I've had a few experiences where I'm doing like a last ditch effort where I really need to run Norkius across, and it's like, I'm going to risk this 75% chance for those extra 2 inches. It might matter.
Yeah, I've been there. But on the fire teams making one roll, what happens if you're running a fire team that has differing fizzes? Do you use the highest fizz, the lowest fizz, average fizz? Do some math. We're trying to get away from that part.
Right.
So I like the idea, but I like the idea.
I don't see a good way either.
Yeah, a good implementation.
Yeah, I mean, I could see not having any units where their dodge value. I could see potentially having units where the move values never incentivize you to dodge over movement just for the purpose of getting extra distance. Like, I don't think that would feel too bad. But yeah, and then that would make it so you're not going to do that with fire teams, right? You're not going to have everybody move dodge, because it doesn't do you any good unless you are trying to get some other benefit out of dodge. And so I feel like that would probably fix it. Though I'm not really excited about the idea of a 6'4" Norkius, so I'm a little torn.
He's kind of that already, almost. So, but I do feel you. I mean, I don't think he needs to be buffed.
There we go. We take away the plus 2 inch dodge. Then it's fixed.
That's also fine. Hey, that would actually appease me.
What about you, Ian? What's something that you are hoping dies with N4?
I don't know. Like, we've covered most of the stuff that's slightly annoying.
Oh, I've got a list.
I mean, I know you've got a list. But I mean, most of the stuff in N4 I was just fine with. Like N4 fixing so much of what N3 kind of had wonky was great. I don't have a whole lot of things that I think just need to, like, from N4 that need to go away. There's actually, I'm the weird one that there's a handful of things from N3 I'd like to see brought back, but we don't need to get into that.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, anything that you hope sticks around from N4 and translates into N5?
Let's see. They did a whole bunch of different, stuff that like the changes are all great. So that they've been talking about. I'm on board with all of those.
Same, really.
Yeah, I mean, not really. I think if we haven't heard about it in something that they're revealing, I think that changes are going to be relatively minor. So I don't know. I think I just got to see what the actual finalized rule set looks like.
Sure, yeah. And these are just things that I hope will be in said finalized rule set. So, in that case, I would love to see Booty have a smaller table with more evenly powered results across it, kind of like metachemistry. Because the thing is, a model that is not a close combat unit getting a DA close combat weapon versus getting MIM 6 is a huge disparity. And I feel like there isn't really quite as big of that that big of a disparity on the metachemistry chart. Like, yes, there are definitely results that are a fair bit more powerful than others, but I feel like the biggest one is probably like the BTS +6 compared to no wooden cap and total immunity. Like, that's a pretty big one, but that's like as bad as it gets.
Yeah. I also really dislike 3 CC weapons on the chart. I don't like that.
Yeah, like I would just like to see the chart smoothed out a bit, probably close to half the results, and things that are generally on par with one another.
Sure. Yeah, I can agree.
And then you could fix the thing where you don't need to have, or where you currently need to have some instances where there are results that need alternates for tags.
Yeah.
So that might not need to be the case anymore, potentially.
I like the tag alternatives, so.
I mean, what, you don't want to armor 14 Yodam?
No, I don't.
No,
but
the Yodam can't get Booty.
Panoplies.
Yeah.
I suppose that is very close to having Booty as well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's literally like why it's in there, because there are a handful of missions with panoplies and where they're not inside of a building that a tag can't get into.
Yeah, firefight.
Sure. But if they change the chart to be more evened out, you probably just wouldn't have results like that to even be a concern.
Yeah.
Azoka, what else you got?
Well, I'd like to say that a lot of the changes that I want to see, I am seeing. So it's hard to talk about wish list items because, I'll just go off the quick ones. I am super happy to see the templates leave. The shotgun templates, that's amazing. The league team nerfs, that's amazing. I am so happy about that. The reset versus guided, that's amazing. Like, granted, that's only 3 that I can really note, but those are my big ones. I mean, I wish that you could ARO versus a repeater as you're getting hacked through it, because that makes sense to me in the idea of Infinity. But that's not in the game, and we're not getting that. So I'll take resetting versus guided as a 10% acceptance of that.
Yeah, I like all of the changes that we've seen 4 and 5 thus far as well. Like, it's definitely a lot of them are even more impactful changes than the things I'm bringing up. These are like things that, that kind of bugs me. It might be nice to see that change, but losing some, like, one of the larger proponents of direct templates in the game is great. The fire team changes, it's kind of everyone across the board. So yes, fire teams are getting worse / different, but I think that might open up some design space for lists and just change how people think about list writing in N5. So I think that'll be pretty interesting.
Absolutely.
And like, those are all good things. And guided, I think that is a good change for guided, where something needed to give. It was just possible to make it a very proactive attack run top of turn 1 strategy, and I don't like that. And that's even playing factions that are notoriously good at it. I don't ever really want to play that way. I like playing guided and having the option for guided, but I would say probably 75% of the time that I bring it, it's more of a deterrent and I don't even end up firing.
Yeah.
It just makes people play the game differently, knowing that it's there. And I kind of like that aspect of it. Or if there's something that I really just can't outshoot, like there's something that my army can't bring something that can really fight that. Here's my backup.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
it's definitely got its purposes, and I'm sad that guided has the stigma that it does. But I mean, like, I played a stupid vanilla Pano list with Crocman with repeaters and you know guided hacking with Deferzen and 4 Fusilier or 3 Fusilier hackers. I was just like, I go first turn and I just kill whatever I want. This was not fun for either of us.
Yeah,
cool.
Well, and then you didn't encounter my dickbag dash shot list with 3 guided missile bots.
I did. I encountered it when Aaron played it against me.
Okay.
I liked that because it was cool, but it was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, that was the guided's too hard to get off and not and I was like, challenge accepted.
Yeah.
Here's the most ridiculous guided list that I can come up with.
Yeah.
Coordinated order guided strike.
Yeah, it's pretty dead, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might dodge one of them, but are you going to dodge all 3 of them?
Yeah. But yeah, I think generally I would love to see a pass over other rules and like mostly equipment or special skills, just to kind of make them a little bit more interesting. Like Albedo is another one where I would like the choice of being able to activate it during any player's order count step, and then it lasts until and it lasts a full round, just like it does currently.
Yeah.
But that you don't have to use it turn 1. That would make it so much more valuable on these incidental albedo pieces that aren't big, scary guns, like things that have marksman rifles and albedo, or other relatively small arms. They would be a lot cooler because they're not going to be charging out turn 1 and going to do stuff.
Yeah, most likely not.
And albedo's already better partially because of the Sixth Sense changes in fire teams.
Mm-hmm.
So they can just engage and apply penalties on MSV units and fire teams.
So nice.
As long as they're not a level 5 fire team, which I think is really cool that they get to utilize some of those abilities. But that might be a nice way to give that a little bit of a bump.
Yeah.
Or honestly, I wonder if it would be too strong if it just applied the whole game.
I think it would be too good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that it's that would just be too good. It's to be completely invisible to MSV for the whole entire game. That's a little. I don't like that.
I mean, you don't run out of smoke grenades.
That is true, but smoke grenades do require a roll.
But it works against 85% of the models of the game instead of the 15%. That's just
True.
a ballpark figure. Don't yell at me.
Yes. No, but I hear what you're saying, but smoke requires a roll. Smoke can be contested.
And it requires an order is the big deal.
Yeah, an order, a roll, and can be contested. And if you, I mean, I guess this applies to Albedo too, but if you shoot something through the smoke, that they do get to respond to you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it should be that way. I just wonder, does that make it too good all of a sudden? Like, is Albedo going to be a chase skill all of a sudden on units that have it when they weren't considered that good beforehand?
I think there's something like I totaled it up and there was 5 units in the whole game that get Albedo in some form.
Yeah, it's really small.
It's small, but it's just that if you have Albedo just goes off and it works all the time, it's almost too good because then, like you said, smoke, but smoke has 3 potential points of failure. Do you have the order? Did you make the roll? did you pass the face-to-face? Depending on how you're using it.
Yeah. Yeah, my only main thing against that would be that many, many more troops do not have a MSV as compared to those that do.
True. Yeah. Yeah, and like the one weird thing too is like albedo. Like if you're a gunfighter with albedo, and you could just like if you know you're in bad range, and you could just be like, all right, well, I'm going to take 3 orders, and now I'm in good range, and you can't respond. Like before, if you wanted to do that, so like it's like you're the gunfighter with albedo, right? You spend your 3 orders to get in good range, and then you take a gunfight. If you want to do that with smoke, you need to spend the orders to smoke to get there. And then you also either have to have like a link team with an MSV trooper, because there's not very many smoke MSV units in the game, like combos. And generally when you have those, from what I've seen, they're very, very short range anyways. So it requires more troops or more investment to get that outcome.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, regardless.
I could see it. I don't think it's a necessary change, but part of me just wonders, like, is that a big deal all of a sudden? I don't know, but it could be.
You know, one thing that I would like to see leave or change, I would like to see Karakuri get vulnerability to EM.
That would be nice. I really wish they would go back to 2 wounds and no wound cap.
With REM presence?
Sure.
Remote presence? Okay.
Yeah, they're REM pres now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I just don't think that non-tags should be structure 3.
Sure. I mean, I like that in the fact that they're, that is another unique piece. So I like to see that, but I don't like them being total immune to everything.
Yeah, needing to be should do something.
Needing to put 5 wounds on them
is a lot
to be able to take it off the table is excessive.
And having an engineer be there. I am, looking back at what we're losing, I am kind of sad that we're losing the Gizmo Kit, Medikit burst bonus in Link teams, because I was a big fan of doing that, but not anymore.
Yeah, I commonly have dedicated support staff. Like I have full doctors and engineers in not every list, but semi-commonly with the forces that I bring. But yeah, it is nice to have the option for sure.
What do you think about the weirdness of losing burst on the DA for the sniper? That's another thing that we're going to lose. That and the flash pulse.
Yeah. So as far as the weapon changes on the Shinden Butai and Kestrel lists from the battle report that Killian and Bostria had, the anti-material mode for sniper rifles is burst 1, which I don't love because I liked them being a good hybrid weapon. Like they're good offensive and good defensive, but they're not the best weapon at either. Like it's not.
It puts them in line with all the other multi-weapons.
That's true, and I don't hate that, but DA made it feel like it had some good punch. Like you're sacrificing burst to hit harder. And I feel like now in APHMG, an APHMG is just going to be like, or multi-HMG is just kind of the best. All right, we'll throw in the HRMC as well, is kind of the best offensive gun you can get. And then defensively, you're probably looking at like a missile launcher is probably the most effective gun. And I really liked them being in kind of a middle spot. And I feel like that's not really quite the case. It did show that they gained suppressive fire, which we've talked about a little bit, but suppressive fire on a sniper rifle feels weird given the range bands. Like I kind of like that, this could be a better defensive weapon by gaining an extra burst, giving up double action and using one of the other firing modes to do so. But when its ideal range is 16 inches or closer, it feels strange. So yeah, I'm a little sad that that's going away because I really like multi-snipers. And if they're going down to burst 1 double action, I kind of hope that they lower the SWC cost to 1 instead of 1.5, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't either.
But I think it shouldn't be more than most heavy machine guns,
Yeah.
at least with that change. And flashballs. I'm sad about flashballs too, because according to that same chart, it showed that stun is only one save. But I think that non-lethal AROs should be more powerful rather than less. I mean, not that stun needs to be 3 saves or anything, just that I don't think it should be worse.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you're not stripping orders, you're just defending yourself. And I think that those sorts of weapons that are used for that should be effective. And that kind of helps regulate the first turn, second turn advantage.
Yeah. D-charge is dropped to APDA.
That is also interesting.
Yeah, and I think that that's probably because of all the martial arts changes and general CC changes. Like they're also one thing that I think is interesting, just as far as an N5 change. This isn't a wish list item, but I think that now saves with possibility of survival, I'm pretty sure they're equal to or under, whereas saves for the rest of Infinity have always been exceed the value.
Yeah.
So it's not equal or exceed, it's exceed. So I think now everything in the game has an extra 5% chance to pass a save.
So
nope, it's the same.
Yeah,
It is the same?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same because
I had the same thought, and then I looked at the math on it, and it's the same.
So if a combi rifle is damage 13, you needed to roll higher than that. That is 7 potential saves, right? So 14 through 20, that's 7 options that where you pass. That combi rifle is now possibility of survival 7. So you need a 7 or less. That's 7 possibilities of success. Mathematically identical.
Okay, fair enough.
Yep. We did it.
Yeah. Show me.
I was like, but isn't it different because that you only have a 1 through a 10 and then 11, blah, 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 blah. And then I looked at it, I'm like, no, I'm being an idiot.
Hey,
well,
infinity math.
No, you didn't.
Infinity math is a thing. Is sometimes hard to get around.
Yeah.
But it's also like one way for so long.
You know, we talk about like wish list changes as well. Martial arts. So I had a big problem with Natural Born Warrior. That skill I probably disliked more than templates on shotguns. And we're seeing that just being now if you have Natural Born Warrior, you just don't suck when other people are better than you. But the martial arts chart is like when you go up, or when you do the lower numbers instead of the going back down from 20, I feel like the math is statistically exactly the same as far as like one die roll, but it sure is going to be like, I wonder, you talk about infinity math, I wonder how that affects with the whole face-to-face calculation. I mean, obviously you counter everything whenever you crit, but it sure is going to feel real good whenever you're playing like a good shooter and you're like, I rolled a 14 and you rolled a 7. I win. Whereas normally they wouldn't have. Right,
yeah. Yeah, I like that it just is easier to parse, I feel like. Like we've played the game long enough that it's something that we're generally used to, but I think the wraparound is going to be easier to pick up, and not having to then add to the dice roll is helpful.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to make the middling rolls feel worse, but the high-end rolls and the low-end rolls both feel better.
Yeah, I agree. Especially as a player of CC, your CC rolls are going to feel better. Like, just with that change, they're going to feel better, even barring the fact that you're rolling 12 dice now. That's an exaggeration.
Yeah.
But like when you roll a 19, you're like, I hit you. I know I hit you, and I know you didn't beat me. Like, that feels good. And now when you roll a 4 or something, you're like, oh, I don't feel as bad.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I really appreciate that the martial arts chart feels significant at each level, as opposed to like levels 3 and 4
They're the same.
were basically the same as level 2. Other than, I mean, there was the damage bonus, but also having to constantly refer back to that because that was
Yeah.
something that I was always like, wait, I want to be 100% sure because, that makes a big difference.
Right.
Was it this or that? And yeah, is it +1 or is it +2 or whatever? But yeah, this is easier to look up. Like, you don't need the chart nearly as often in my mind. And each step is notably better than the last. So that feels good. But yeah, I think that, that's a pretty good rundown of where we've been with N4 and some of the stuff that we are seeing leave and some things that we still hope to see leave. But before
Yeah.
we kind of close off the episode, I want to give a quick shout to every one of our patrons. Those of you that support us on Patreon, we really, really appreciate the help. It goes a long way in covering costs for the show, and everything goes back into the show in the form of equipment or special projects or subscription costs or things like that. We don't take a paycheck out of this or anything like that. So if you are interested in joining that, you can find us on patreon.com/metachemistry. And we've got a handful of levels, depending on how much you're willing to support, and have some benefits that we use to kind of show our gratitude for that. So some of that's some extra weight in polls. There's early access to episodes. There's special channels on our Discord. And then as far as the Discord itself, that's freely open other than those handful of special channels. And we'd love to have you there. It's in the show notes if you want to join us. And you can join our Discord to talk Infinity for all kinds of stuff. We even have channels for other games if you want to just hang out. But yeah, whether that's, you can show off painted minis or talk about lists or throw wild speculation about N5 or whatever the case may be. We'd love to have you there. But with that said, Azoka, Ian, any final thoughts on our saying goodbye to N4? Azoka?
N4, you were a lovely mistress, and I am sad to see you go. But I am welcoming my new lover, N5.
There you have it. What about you, Ian?
Yeah, no, like I said, we had a lot of good times with N4. It was overall much improved game over N3, and just as N3 was much improved over N2. So I'm just hoping that with N5, it's just gonna keep that trend and improve it that much more again, because core mechanics still looks like the same old Infinity that we all know and love, just smoothing some stuff out, switching some stuff up a little bit. I'm here for it. I'm excited for the change. Now, the one thing we didn't really mention that still the question: how are they going to fix reinforcements in N5? That's what I'm waiting for.
True.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting because we know they want it to be a part of the game. But what is that going to look like? And is it going to be much better? Is it going to be something that draws people in and makes it more appealing to play? Who knows? But yeah, for me, I want to say that I hope that everyone can look past the units and factions that are leaving because it looks like N5 is going to be another big step up. I think it's going to be better than N4. Personally, all the changes that I've been seeing, I feel are positive, and it looks to be really exciting. I think that it makes a lot of moves for the better. And I know that it sucks having things not be playable anymore. And I have some of my stuff that I have now put in the catacombs as they will not be seeing play.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that just because they're gone now doesn't mean they'll never come back. And who knows? Like Bostria was saying, hold on to your old stuff, but enjoy the new stuff while it's here. So, hopefully N5 is still full of
So
other
excited.
promise, and I'd love to see some of these other changes.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be, I get to teleport to the future and skip all of y'all guys wait because I'm going to go on a vacation. And then when I get back, boom, N5. I'm so ready.
There you go. So yeah, awesome. Well, on behalf of Metachemistry, this has been Devin.
Azoka?
And Ian, and that's the meta.